So for dominance, where channels belong to one partner and not the other, is where one person gets to see what that other person is like wholly, without anything of their own getting in the way, in the channel, that is. So when we look at dominance first, we're seeing that it's very interesting, Ross says, because something is coming from completely from the other person. So in other words, this person on the right-hand side doesn't have any of that. It's alien, it's foreign. So here they are. They bring this definition into your life. And the thing that is so fascinating, Ross says, is that it gives you a glimpse, this person gets a glimpse of what the other person really is, what that person brings into their life. And of course, it's going to show up differently depending on the auric frequency. Now let's look at charts. We have a lot of charts to look at today. Ross says that dominance is a relationship that can be very special. Special in the sense that it's the way of seeing the other in the way other people also see them, provided they have a dominance with them, of course. So it's interesting to see how many people have that in their relationship, this perspective of their partner. The other people don't have it, that person, maybe they don't see it. When you have your partner with a dominance, and that dominance is always separate from your relationship, especially, you get to see that. So if the dominance is split off from the main area of definition, you really get to see that because it's so, so different from you. It's always something unique to that other person that's standing there. So it's part of what you identify as what that other person is. So the thing that's highly educative about that other person. So let's go look at what we have. We have 5 dominance channels in Victoria Beckham and David Beckham's chart. Channel of synthesis, a design of being sensitive, is David. Channel of charisma, where awareness becomes deeds, David. Channel of emoting, design of moodiness, David. So 3 areas of dominance where she gets to see what he is in that relationship. Now, what he gets to see what she is, as you can see, channel of rhythm, design of being in the flow, and channel of recognition, design of focused energy. These are the things that make her unique to him. It's something that's standing on its own. It's still part of the relationship dynamic, but it's something that they're really learning a lot about from each other. So it's highly educative. That is, you learn about a process that you don't have, and you can obviously be deeply conditioned by it. Now, they're both generators, so their auras are going to be very porous and open to embracing each other. It would be different if one person was a manifestor or one person was a reflector, because those 2 types they have their own kind of shielding, where the manifestor is dense and repelling, closed and repelling, where the reflector is resistant and sampling. Okay, so there's going to be a totally different sensation based upon what the auric frequency of that each person's design is going to be. So you can't compare them. Now, dominance, what Ross says about this is that it gives you a view to the consistency of the being that you're connected to. The being that you're connecting to is going to show you their dominance. And more than that, he says, this is where you have the deepest potential learning. So if there's somebody with a definition in an area that you don't have planetary activations, it brings an opportunity for really grasping that process. It's consistent, it's always there. You get access to witnessing how that person shows up. And they're going to show up like that with other people too. So this is really where you get to see the real other in relationship to you as much as you can, based on them having their own design and their connection chart to each other. So here we see that he's got these channels that have specific activations within them. They're planets, right? So they're life aspects. Each of these life aspects create the frequency of each of these strengths. So his design of moodiness with Saturn sitting there heavy and Venus, you know, oh, Venus, fickle Venus right there. That's going to be a very different kind of moodiness than somebody else with different activations. So if you want to get really detailed with this, you can see that you can. And Ross says the thing that makes dominance so interesting is that it's a way to look beneath the veil of the partnership characteristics and see something about your partner that is always there. It's truly them, because you're seeing their hardwiring or their definition exposed. So let's imagine Victoria Beckham came to you for an analysis of why her husband is so moody. Why is he so heavy? Why is he so dark? What's wrong with him? If only you would be not so freaking moody, our relationship would be better. Now, I'm just hypothesizing, but you can see how if you gave each of them an analysis, and what Rob would do was sit down next to one, give them the analysis, but the other person would watch, and the other person would see that same analysis of the individual, and then he would do them together. And because each of the partners got to see the individual of the other person's analysis, he would, he and she, either one of them, would be able to accept, hey, this guy's fixed in his moodiness. This guy has moodiness. And if he's not self, it's going to be really painful, right? We know Saturn is a great touchstone for whether or not this person is operating in alignment. If the Saturn is painful, then we know that there is something really challenging there for them to work through. So it's a great way for getting a little, what is that, like a signpost in the relationship, but either for an individual, their relationship with themselves, are they operating in alignment, or for the relationship together. Now, dominance, what Ross says about dominance is that it's something that can be kind of like the sound of its name. It can be something that's really uncomfortable. So he says, you can end up with a partner who has a specific orientation in a certain way, and you can never escape it. It's always there. It's in your face. It's always in your body, and you're the one that has to deal with it. So what is this beautiful woman, Victoria Beckham, having to deal with in her auric frequency? That moodiness, that heaviness. So what is she having to deal with? That heaviness, sadness, melancholy. You can see that together. She can resonate with that. She can identify with that. But together, they're even more so. You have the entire stream of emoting together. So this, for them, having this energy being put into each other without awareness, they can misidentify and think that there's something wrong. Why is he like that? Why am I more like that with him? Oh, our relationship is so beautiful sometimes, but it's so painful sometimes. Why is it so painful? What's wrong? Excuse me. The not self always wants to know what's wrong. Nothing wrong. The only solution to each one of them is to operate in alignment, right? So we do our best to educate them. Now here we're going to look at Justin Timberlake. You know, he's an American singer, songwriter, record producer, and actor. And in April 2003, he began dating actress Cameron Diaz. They met at the Nickelodeon Kids' Choice Awards. And after speculation of breakups throughout their relationship, they split in 2006. So 3 years of a tumultuous relationship. Ross says about this dominance is that sometimes you have somebody, because of the genetic attraction, who is open to connecting to somebody who is very defined. And then you end up in these situations where you can have a lot of dominance, and it can be quite uncomfortable. There's varying degrees of it. Now look at this person's chart, all of those integration channels with Cameron. And then also we have this channel that is about concentration. So it's a very heavily weighted as far as very strong channel. Not to mention she's also emotional with that channel of community, part seeking a whole. So you can see what she's bringing to the table as far as dominance is a whole lot of stuff, even though it doesn't look like much. Remember, there's so many channels here. There's 10 dominance channels in this relationship. He's got 2, Keeper of the Keys and the Witness as his channels that he brings to the table. She is a 2-4 manifesting generator. He's a 5-1 manifesting generator. Now here we can see more of the details of what's going on and what is it that's really getting, fixed or locked into a specific way of showing up, which can also, as we know, be very irritating. With dominance, there wouldn't be activations that would be changed. So another reason why we would see the whole them as far as in each other's relationship, right? So Ross says the greatest difficulty in relationships for the not self is that they truly do not know each other. They can't. They're caught up in the characteristics of the partnership. They don't have their unique perspective to be able to look at the partner, aside from the fact that these beings are not necessarily beings who are going to be operating as themselves anyway. I get so fixated on detriments. That's usually the first thing I look to see what is the thing in each other that is really getting triggered or swayed away from what they're designed to show up like specifically. So that was my habit. Now, Monica Bellucci and Vincent Cassel here. These 2 were married. They have 2 children together. She was a fashion model, and she made her transition to Italian films and then American and French films. And he is an actor, and they met in 1996 while filming the French film The Apartment. They married 3 years later, and then they have, again, 2 daughters. So she's played in the Matrix sequels, and Mary Magdalene, she played also in The Passion of the Christ. And he's known in his work in the US for Oceans 12 and 13, as well as Black Swan. Now they separated in 2020 by mutual agreement, is the statement put out by their representatives, after 14 years of marriage. We're looking now at a manifestor, 4-6 manifestor for Monica, and a 2-4 manifesting generator for Vincent. Here we see some dominance channels. Monica has the channel of openness, design of a social being. Also the channel of judgment, design of insatiability. Vincent has the channel of charisma, where awareness must become deeds, and the channel of structuring, a design of individuality from genius to freak. So you can see as far as thematics are concerned, they have some shared reality there as far as thematics of circuitry with the dominance anyway, in individuality, so they can relate to each other in that respect. Now let's look more at details here with dominance being an interesting thing. Remember, to the genes, dominance can be interesting because it's something that the other person doesn't have, and therefore it can be attractive. Now we're going to take a look using this example at the way the manifestor with the generator operates. Okay, manifestor with Monica, as you can see, no sacral defined, and generator with Vincent. Okay, so here we have the channel of openness, channel of judgment, and there's her aura. This manifestor has that dominance. You can see they're very strong activations there. So what the generator is trying to do is envelop the manifestor with very little success, by the way. It just does what it can to try to envelop, but it gets very little in return. So what do we know about the manifestor and its frequency? Repelling, closed, not letting someone in. So this trying to embrace and envelop, it's like a parachute that's open. It's just going to wrap right around. It can't penetrate into that. Generator aura, as far as the connection there, is not going to have the same kind of experience of her dominance as he would if she were a generator, because the auric frequencies are not going to be the same. It's like pouring water and oil together, or even mixing salinity of salt water. Did you know that they won't mix? So the moment that Ross says, the moment that you're getting very little in return, genetically, that's the moment that there are all kinds of things that arise. Now look at this. This picture is brilliant, Katja. He's leaning in towards her and she's actually leaning away. It's just kind of an interesting dynamic there. Of course, he says in the context of the generator, the first thing that comes to the surface, what is it? You guessed it, frustration. What they are getting, as an example from the manifestor, the dominance from the manifestor is that it has very little impact. It's a different story. Now here we've got generator and manifesting generator. That's two auric frequencies that are open and enveloping, very different than what we just looked at. Now this is the 9 and 0 relationship, as you remember. And here we have a channel of charisma where awareness becomes deeds for Yoko Ono, the community as well, part seeking the whole, and then also abstraction, where mental activity is mixed with clarity. And so John Lennon's experience of Yoko Ono and those channels is because he's generative, is a mutual enveloping and a mutual conditioning, because both of them are generators. The energetic frequency is porous. Remember, generators are very much subject to conditioning based upon the dynamics that are there. So Ross says the really interesting thing in relationships is that with the 9 and 0, the 8 and 1, you can look at them and at that level, when they come together in the connection chart, there is this thing there. And the thing takes on a life of its own. It's what you become as a couple, as friends, you know, you become like a unit. Other people look at you as if you're, they even sometimes combine your names like they did with Brangelina, because it's a thing. And the thing that you become, you begin to see each other within that framework, because that is the thing that's alive in interaction with each other. Particularly when you see, for example, the 9 and 0, when they're very locked into each other, you can see each other through that connection of that, locking inness. So think about what it is like to have dominance in your relationship. Here's her dominance channels. There's all the planetary activations that John gets to see. If you don't have a dominance in your relationship, as an example, does anybody in here don't have a dominance in your relationship? I know I do. Each one of us have a dominance in the relationship. So each one of us get to know the other through that dominance. But what happens if you don't have it? Okay. If you don't have the dominance in relationship to the other, what does that mean? It means that neither one of you really know what each other is like away from each other. Neither one of you know what each other is like away from each other. Did you grasp that? There we go. No one is going to see the other, really, truly, absolutely, because the consistency of the dominance is what makes that other person what they are. And when you don't have planetary activations within your design, you get to see what they are like with others. So when you're in relationship with somebody with whom you don't have a dominance, you don't get to see what they are like with others. So that was the point. So what happens is, with not self-decisions possible and each individual being lost in that, they have very little understanding of each other as a being, okay, as a sovereign being on their own. So why do you think that so many relationships get to the point where one of the partners is in the stage of this just doesn't work? They just get there because they don't make the decision correctly to be in relationship in the first place. Now let's look at Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Richard Burton was a 5-1 reflector, a Welsh actor. He was noted for his mellifluous and baritone voice. He was established as a formidable Shakespearean actor in the 1950s. He gave a really memorable performance of Hamlet in 1964. He was also a heavy drinker. What do we know about undefined G centers and the drink? 5-1 reflector, undefined G. He was a heavy drinker, and his reported failure to live up to expectations. Listen to that, 5-1 reflector, expectations. It disappointed some critics and colleagues and added to his image as a great performer who had wasted his talent. Nevertheless, he is widely regarded as one of the most acclaimed actors of his generation. Now, 5-1 remained closely associated with public consciousness because, even though he might not have liked to be there as a 5-1, his second wife, actress Elizabeth Taylor, was her fourth, I think it was her fourth husband, something like that. They had a really turbulent relationship, and it was rarely out of the news. So what does this man get from Elizabeth Taylor? A dominance channel, the channel of initiation, a design of needing to be first. He knew how she needed to be first. This is a projector, 2-4 projector for Elizabeth Taylor. They became a single definition. There was some work to do there, work to do. We'll talk more about that down the road a bit. So here we have Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor with the detail of what they do to each other, as you can see. And I'm going to read a little bit more about them, particularly for the younger generation. I know I remember at least her, not him. These were some famous people back in the day. In 1964, they were wed. And then their relationship only lasted for 10 years. But then they're like my grandparents. They married, got divorced, married. They married again briefly in 1975. But for well over a decade, they were the world's most well-known, most talked about couple. Oh, the 4. Yeah, 2-4, Elizabeth Taylor. What do we know about 2-4 profiles? They get lots of spotlights, limelights, attention, because it's all who you know and what talent other people see in you as a 2. Now, they met on the set of the 1963 film Cleopatra. She was married to Eddie Fisher, her 4th husband. Yeah, so Richard would be her 5th. And then Fisher married, Fisher in turn had memorably left Debbie Reynolds, the Singing in the Rain actress with whom he had 2 children, including Carrie Fisher, to be with Taylor. So Taylor and Burton's affair caused this worldwide scandal and was even condemned by the Vatican. Now let's look at Elizabeth Taylor over here with her channel of initiation, needing to be first. North Node, Uranus, Venus, and the other Uranus as well. So you can see she had a lot of unusual, weird, a love of being first. She was born in 1932, February 27th, and she died in 2011. British American actress. She began as a child actress in the 1940s, and she was one of the most popular stars of classical Hollywood cinema, the world's highest paid movie actress in 1960, and well known for the rest of her life. In 1999, the American Film Institute named her the 7th greatest female screen legend of classic Hollywood cinema. She's credited as not only one of the last major stars of classic Hollywood, but also one of the first modern day celebrities. She was born in London, and she moved with her family, they were American parents, to Los Angeles in 1939. So we can see with the dynamic that was there, he would have been really magnetically attracted to her. Why? She turned on his G center, identity, love, direction. With you, I can find out who I am with you, says the romantic not self-purpose. Okay, let's go back to him really quick because I feel like I didn't give him enough attention. With Richard Burton, you can see too the dynamic. Oh yeah, that's right, because we're only focusing on dominance. Reflectors, for that very reason, no one else is going to really, truly ever know what a reflector is. The closest you can get to that is if you live with a reflector and you see them day in and day out and their lunar cycle and how they change. So you get to know them through the patterns or the cycles of experience that you have with that reflector, because that's the only way you get to know them. It's not through a broadcasting channel like we do with Elizabeth Taylor and her needing to be first, but it's you get to know a reflector over time because they operate on a very different frequency. And Lisa's saying the reflector doesn't know either. All right. So now, no dominance, it brings surprise. So Naraya is saying, my husband has 2 dominants and I have none in our relationship. So no dominance. So the husband doesn't know you for you in the same way that you know him for him. This is especially true as you're a projector, hey? So what happens if there's no dominance? It brings surprise, because what dominance brings is a comfort in knowing your partner. You know you can rely upon them for whatever it is that you fell in love with them, if it has to do with their dominance. So it's all them. It operates consistently with you and with other people. So you get to see that in the dynamic of their partnership or relationship with other people. Something in your partner that has absolutely nothing to do with you. So we get to learn to appreciate it rather than resisting it. That is the thing that you teach to your clients. When they come to you complaining about that person and why they're so weird or different or stubborn or whatever the thematic of that channel is, you get to show them visibly, graphically, hey, there's nothing we can do about this. They're not doing it on purpose. You'll see how important that is, especially next week with the definition. Okay, so no dominance brings surprise. Dominance brings comfort. Dominance brings comfort, especially if you fell in love with that person for who they are, what they really show up like consistently in the dominance. Okay, so that was dominance.